Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we have Shapeshift's new COO, Lisa Loud. Really excited to have her on the channel to talk about Shapeshift and all sorts of cool stuff like that. So Lisa, I'm going to kick it over to you to give an introduction. Thanks for being here.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. And I'm so excited to be part of Shapeshift now. I've got my 1 month anniversary actually today, which is exciting. Feels like forever, but it's actually only been 4 weeks, surprisingly. So my background is in programming. I used to be a mathematician, programmer, and I eventually moved from that into marketing at PayPal. And so after PayPal, I went to BitMEX to lead their CMO, to lead their marketing operations. But I found at that point that they needed more than just marketing. They needed to know how a company ran. So I really got involved with operations at that point, and I loved it. So since then, I've been doing COO roles for different cryptocurrency companies, mostly exchanges, but also some really innovative startups in the space. But I've been looking for my home, and Shapeshift has got the perfect combination for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think going from roles, especially a place like PayPal, it's very much like a traditional finance, like the last generation of financial product, to now in the crypto space. I'm sure it's been interesting going to BitMEX and now Shapeshift to see how each of these different players are very different from each other.
Yeah, they're very different. Corporate culture is quite different from startup culture. I love both of them, but it's nice to have a combination where you have the startup feel, but you can actually have some structure in place so you can get stuff done more efficiently. You know how startups are.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's really interesting to me is because my full-time job is I'm a programmer and I do app development full-time. And so I'm always interested meeting other technical folks in the space. But your background is very unique in that you were an engineer. Do you mind me asking where you were an engineer?
Yeah, I worked at Apple. Most of my work was at Apple. Before that, I was with a language company. We were creating Turbo C++, and I was on the database side. But then Apple, and after Apple, it was Oracle. I did some work for Intuit as a contractor, so got to see all of those, those original startups that became the big tech companies of today.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. And I think going into a marketing role at places like Shapeshift or places like exchanges like BitMEX, I presume it's probably difficult to market some of these things because it's so nascent. A lot of the stuff that happens behind the scenes is so technical. And that's why, people that's why I created this channel. And I'm sure that's why marketing, folks like yourself are now in really critical roles within these companies.
Yeah, it's really challenging. And, I interviewed, we are still looking for a CMO. I interviewed a CMO a couple days ago, and he had no idea of the crypto space. And his ideas were all about digital, like AdWords and, offline marketing. And it was amazing to me how much someone who's not in the space is missing. It's very specific. What we need to do in the crypto space for marketing is we need to market to people who understand a lot technically, who get the value props like security, self-custody. All of those things are really important to people who understand what's going on in finance these days. So it's really hard. It's not an easy position to fill at all. And we need somebody who understands the crypto world.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and speaking to that point, what was it like for you going from Apple and then to PayPal, where I'm sure you probably found some of the challenges that PayPal has had over the years across the board, and then over to the crypto space in BitMEX and now Shapeshift? Like, what's that experience been like for you?
From a high level, I'd say every company looks great on the outside and has a lot of dysfunction on the inside.
Yeah.
So now I'm not surprised anymore when I go into companies and find things that are, weird. Apple was one thing, and I don't know that it was very early on in my career, so I don't think I had the discernment to see what was wrong, but I can definitely tell you that PayPal suffered from their own philosophy of roll your own technology. Everything is really is done from internal engineers. And it's really hard to upgrade technology when it's been designed from the inside and you're not a subject matter expert on it.
Right.
So PayPal suffers from legacy code. But then moving from that into BitMEX, I mean, it's very hard to compare those two.
Yeah,
You're
certainly.
talking about the old innovations, but in the early days of PayPal, yeah, they were innovators, but now they want to be a bank and getting anything done at PayPal. I love Dan Schulman. He's one of my favorite people, CEO of PayPal. But it's 18,000 employees, right?
Yeah, it's
So
huge.
how can you get anything really startup-y or innovative done when you have that many employees? It's tough. And then when I went over to BitMEX, it was a very small team. Grew pretty quickly to about 75 within about 6 months. But at the beginning, there was just pure startup, right? And we had an idea and we just did it. There was no legal at the beginning. There was no compliance. There was no security. None of these things were part of that company. So it was just me picking up the phone and saying, Arthur, you want to do this? And him saying, yeah, sure, sounds good. And off we went.
Yeah, it's crazy, I think, to see too then how companies like that, exchanges especially, grow into what you would see in like a larger tech company. It's like you have a team for security, you have a team for compliance, which is really important now, especially as like regulations starting to catch up a little bit. And we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But that being said, what was the draw to the crypto space, knowing that that's what you had to expect?
That's a really good question. I feel like a friend of mine told me that I should look into crypto. I mean, I was aware of it early on. Actually, I'll tell you why I was aware of it early on. A friend of mine brought over something and put it in my house. He said, this is a heater. And it turned out it was a Bitcoin miner.
Well, it kind of is a heater in a way.
It was. At that point, it was.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't worth running unless you were heating your house at that point.
Absolutely.
So I was exposed early on, but really didn't have a good understanding till 2016 when a friend of mine told me, you're into trading all these cool things, options and financial instruments and futures and FX. Why don't you look into crypto? And so that's when I first became aware of it. And I quickly got hooked. I was spending all of my outside work hours watching my positions.
Yeah, you're not alone in that.
I got to know the guys at BitMEX through the troll box, basically, which is kind of funny because they were on there, and little by little, it just turned into a better conversation. And I met Jason in San Francisco when I was on a business trip for PayPal, and he was like, "We really need someone with your experience over here." So I was like, "Okay, well, PayPal's not doing crypto, so I guess I might as well make my hobby into my day job, then I can sleep again."
Yeah, there you go. I mean, and I think that's a story that you hear a fair number of times in this space where, there are folks that have been working in, maybe traditional finance or, doing technology related careers elsewhere and have now moved into crypto. And it's just it started out as a hobby or something they like to trade or research. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and I think in that same vein too, it is a little bit of a topic that comes up not enough in my opinion, but what would you say to women considering getting involved in crypto and how they can find those avenues to find themselves not just in, technical positions if that's what they want, leadership positions, how do you navigate that space? Because obviously some of these spaces get very male dominated, of course.
Yeah, and crypto is an interesting intersection of finance on one hand, which is fairly male dominated, and trading on the other hand, at this point in its history. And when you take the intersection of that, it's really mostly male dominated. But what I would say to women is that it's really hard to make a name for yourself in the finance world. It's pretty hard to make a name for yourself in the trading world or in engineering, right? But if you look at this new crypto space, it's much less competitive. And the reason it is less competitive is that a lot of people don't want to get into it because of the risk. Right now, it's a nascent industry. It's still very young, not a lot of big companies in this space. And a lot of people are avoiding it because they want to see what happens. So
Hmm.
now is actually the time to jump in, because if you're a woman and you really want to make a career in the tech field or a finance field or a trading field or anything, crypto is wide open,
Hmm.
right? You can jump in and you can be still one of the early adopters. You can get the early experience. I'll tell you, when I'm trying to recruit for positions across the board,
Hmm.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard from recruiters, well, can we widen the search to people who don't have professional crypto experience because there's just no more candidates?
Hmm.
Don't be one of those candidates, you know.
Yeah.
Get into the space, get your first job in crypto, and that positions you really well to be one of a very small set of qualified candidates. In addition to that, there's a lot of companies like Shapeshift who are looking to diversify their workforce.
Hmm.
And if you are a woman, you're part of an even smaller pool of candidates. So you really have an advantage. Anyone who's ambitious and really wants to rise quickly, I would say take the risk, go into the crypto space. It's going to go somewhere. I really believe that.
Yeah.
And you can rise pretty fast.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I think that we are at the very like beginning phases of the build up to the next generation tech stack that we're going to see permeate most business, most lines of business, around the world, and cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies being one of those facets. There are other ones that are out there, in the, you know, machine learning sort of spaces, but those are even more developed than I think that the crypto space is. So lots of
Yeah.
opportunity across the board here.
Yeah, right. AI is another one. I mean, machine learning is one phase of AI, but
Yeah,
also
niched.
deep, deep learning, and then also the quantum computing. You know, get
Yeah,
into that field, although that's even more risky
yeah,
than that. Who
yeah.
knows where?
There's much less substantive stuff to show right now, but we're getting there.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
awesome. So changing gears a little bit, I want to know for you specifically, what led you to join Shapeshift over every other company that you may have had opportunities to work for, and what was behind that decision for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I evaluate companies on a few criteria. One is the quality of technology,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of companies where they have a lot of good ideas. They haven't built them yet, or they built them on top of some other platform that isn't that solid. Um, but Shapeshift actually has very good technology. This is
Hmm.
an engineering driven company, and it's 6 years old. This company has built a lot of good technology.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the foundation, one of the foundational pieces I look for. Um, Second, I look for integrity, the willingness to comply with what needs to be complied with.
Hmm.
It's a tricky walk in this industry because there's a lot of gray areas, and
Yeah.
we're also trying to change the world. So, do we do everything the way banks do them? Well, no. Do we try to do things so that we're not violating any laws? Yes. So it's really hard to find that balance, but I look for companies that are at least trying to find a balance between what's legal and what's innovative. So that's the
Yeah.
second piece. And I think that also speaks to leadership. I feel like the leadership at this company has very high integrity. I trust the executive team that I work with.
Hmm.
I trust them to do the right thing to the best of their ability and also to have my back. So that's the second piece. And then the third piece is a nice to have, not a must have, but it's brand equity and brand
Hmm.
recognition.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of startups in the space that just don't have it yet, right? I would say most of them don't. So I've worked for a lot of small companies that nobody's heard of. I would still consider working for one of those companies before I found this opportunity with Shapeshift, or before they found me. um, but if you add that on top of the other two pieces, Shapeshift has a great reputation. Everyone knows, they may not know what Shapeshift is doing right now, but
Hmm.
most people in the crypto space have at least heard of Shapeshift and have a positive regard for the brand. And that's huge when you're trying to build something revolutionary. If you have recognition, you have like all the oil and the momentum behind you to
Yeah,
keep going.
definitely. And to your point, I think you're totally right. Most people that have been in the space for any length of time have heard of Shapeshift. They've probably interacted with Shapeshift or some of the executive folks like Eric on Twitter, for example. And I think having been around maybe since 2013, if I remember correctly, so much has been done since then.
11, yeah. Well, oh,
Yeah.
Shapeshift has 2013, but Eric 2011.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm a huge fan of the non-custodial wallet service that you guys have set up within Shapeshift. So that's a huge feature to me. So I'm curious, for my own personal sake, what's going on at Shapeshift? What's new? Now that you're in a role where you're working with operations, where are you trying to take Shapeshift or help take Shapeshift?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what excites me right now.
Yep.
We want to build Shapeshift as the portal for crypto. So
Mhm.
there's right now we have 10 to 20 million people who own some kind of cryptocurrency. That's a very small slice of the population in the world, right?
Yep.
Does that represent all the people who would potentially be interested? No. So what is the barrier for the rest of the people who could benefit from some form of cryptocurrency ownership or participation? I think there's several things. One is the friction.
Mhm.
It's a pretty big barrier to understand how to get your keys and start a wallet and store your seed phrase and send something, copy a wallet address. There's a lot of friction
Mhm.
and do KYC.
Yeah.
There's a lot of friction in just getting onboarded and understanding what it is. And people think it's very complicated too. I hear that a lot in Ubers and Lyfts.
Yep.
Oh, that sounds great. I wish I could understand that, you know?
That's an issue.
So reducing that friction and creating a platform where a lot of people can come on board, where people can share it with their friends. Like you probably have a lot of family members or friends who, think you're crazy, probably,
Oh yeah, certainly.
but they also don't have any crypto and you don't know how to get them there. If you had a very simple way of bringing them on board and sharing that with
Mhm.
them, and you knew that it wouldn't overwhelm them, there's an opportunity for you to share it with people that you'd otherwise have already done it with.
I
So,
completely agree. Yeah.
so I want to make Shapeshift that facilitator to bring more people on board. But the vision doesn't stop there. What do you do once you have some crypto, right?
Mhm.
There's all these things you could do. You could stake it, you could mine Bitcoin with some kind of cloud mining facility. You could buy something, but really, who wants to waste their Bitcoin buying something?
Yep.
Or you could trade, right? You could earn interest on it. You could do DeFi. There's so many things now and more things to come where you could, I can't remember what it's called, but there's some company that lets you take the change from every transaction. If it's $1.50, you take the top 50%, 50
Mhm.
cents, and you convert it to crypto. So you could start saving in crypto,
Yeah.
which presumably will go up. So it's a good savings plan. All those things, I would like to make Shapeshift the dashboard, kind of the administrative dashboard
Mhm.
where you bring people on board and then we hold their hands and take them through the journey of learning how to use their crypto and how to benefit from it, maybe how to avoid cross-border transaction fees by using some kind of stablecoin
Mhm.
transmission. There's a lot of things that we could help people learn how to do, but we have to bring them into the space first. So step one,
Right.
bring them into the space. Step two, teach them how to use it. And then step three, everybody benefits from that in the industry. Because if we even doubled the size of the crypto community, that would be huge, right? Everyone would have much more ability to change the world.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And specifically with Shapeshift, I think that the framework for this type of vision is there already. Like for me personally, I use all the features, right? The exchange features, you know, did the KYC, there's all this controversy about KYC in general in the
Yeah.
space. That's a whole separate topic we could spend an hour on. But even for folks that don't want to do KYC, I would argue that Shapeshift's platform is a great way to just aggregate your hardware wallet transactions and content so you can manage that portfolio there, right? It's a great place to do that. And just in general, to be a dashboard to keep track of what's going on in the crypto space in general.
Yeah.
So if you could point to one or two like specific features that in your mind, obviously you're at Shapeshift, but if you were a Shapeshift user, what would you want? Where's your head at on that?
What would I want?
Yep.
Yeah, I would want a much easier onboarding process.
Mhm.
I mean, it's pretty clear that that's what everyone wants. We just had ETH Denver, and we had a lot of people come by the booth,
Mhm.
and we discovered that the T-shirts were the hottest item
Mhm.
there. So,
Yep.
so we gave T-shirts away for doing KYC. So that meant people had to stand there and do their KYC right there in order to get the T-shirt, and they did. They went through it, a lot of them, but
Mhm.
um, it took a long time, right? And it was a little bit painful. So if we can reduce that friction, that's probably the biggest thing that we can do. I would say the other thing that people want is probably limit orders. That's what I would want,
Mhm.
as a hobby trader. I don't want to always take the market price. I want to have a resting order on there. So it's difficult to do limit orders if you have self-custody,
Mhm.
obviously, because the funds are not under our control. They're under the wallet holder's control.
Yeah.
But if there was a way to post limit orders on Shapeshift, I think that would go a long way to bringing more people in.
Yeah. I
What
mean,
what feature would you want?
that's a great question. And I think that the features that I would love is for on Shapeshift with a non-custodial structure, have an easy, you know, central sourced way to take advantage of some of these new really valuable things like DeFi, right? Interest earning products, loan products, and staking as well. Because I think people understand what you can do with that, but they don't want to go and download another app or go and do another service and go through a
Right.
guide to connect their ledger to they want something that's easy. And I think Shapeshift is one of the folks that are uniquely positioned to do that with the non-custodial service setup.
Thank you. That's really great to hear. I'd be interested in the comments to hear from your viewers to see what other features they'd be interested in.
Mhm.
Just let's crowdsource some good tech here.
Yeah, you're making my job easy. I didn't even have to remember to ask for the comments section. So thanks for that. And I think this is tangentially related to what we've been talking about. And I have my own opinions about this, but I want to hear yours. What role do you think exchanges and exchange-like platforms? I would say Shapeshift has at least an exchange component to it. What role do you think you guys play in establishing and reinforcing best practices for people that are holders or traders, for helping develop standards for the industry, and how you guys are integrating with regulators, not just in one country but outside of your country of purview? What role do you guys play, or at least do you think you should play?
Yeah, I think we should play a large role in that, and we're just starting, really. I think Shapeshift's history is interesting. It was started by libertarians and people who are not really excited about government, and so
Hmm.
up until now, I don't know that there has been a huge movement within the company to make an impact with
Hmm.
regulators, but we also have worked very closely with the regulators when required.
Hmm.
And I would say from that perspective, the regulators know that if there's anything amiss, they can contact us and they're going to get a good response and a willing cooperative response. But in terms of changing the world and changing policy, that's just something that's something we've just started to get into.
Hmm.
We've had some conversations recently um, about what we can do and how we can make an impact, and joining Perian's Digital Chamber of Commerce out of DC, joining some lobbyist groups.
Hmm.
There's a lot that we can do with the voice that we have and probably have the responsibility to do. Um, it's just finding those avenues where it makes sense and where we can make a difference and not getting too bogged down in detail.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is. It's more important now than it ever has been for some of the consistently present companies like Shapeshift, like Coinbase, regardless of any controversy that happens in the space for whatever reason, for those big companies that have a big voice and a big footprint to go and have that dialogue with regulators, because in my humble opinion, regulation is going to come whether or not we're involved. And so
Right.
we'd be better off having the conversation and dialogue to at least influence and educate to make sure those regulations are as, common sense, but still non-restrictive as possible. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
No, I absolutely agree. And you can look at Meltem Demirors and her influence on. She was testifying in the Facebook Libra um, congressional hearings,
Hmm.
which went on forever. But
Yeah.
she was very impressive. She was very well spoken, and I think that went a long way to educate the people who were there. Um, the same thing with. I was thinking of somebody else who's making a difference right now, but she slipped my mind. But regardless, I think it's huge to be able to bring that to bear on regulations, with regulators. And regulators are people too. I think often we forget that part of it. It's just that there's a different motivation there. They're very much motivated by protecting investors who may be unsophisticated, for example, or protecting the consumer from misleading
Hmm.
information. So we have to remember that their motive essentially is protection. And if you take it from that perspective and see, okay, along with protecting people, how can we also empower people? Then our motives are fairly closely aligned, in my opinion. I'm sure there's lots of people to disagree with me on that one, but
Yeah.
I always think collaboration is better than adversarial approaches.
Yeah. I get pushback on this thread all the time, but I vehemently believe in my side of things. I know it's a push pull from both sides of the argument. We can't have too much regulation and just total laissez-faire approach to letting regulators just decide things, but we also can't pretend like we live in a world where no regulation it will ever exist, right? So
Right, right.
that's
Well,
my viewpoint.
I remember the other one I was going to mention is Crypto Mom and her recommendation
Yes.
for there to be a 3-year moratorium for ICOs, or not moratorium, but like sandbox.
Hmm.
Um, and I just think that we have to remember that for regulators, this whole space is like one small percentage of their job, right? And for
Yes.
us, it's everything. Like we think about and live and breathe crypto all the time, so it matters a lot to us. It's not the only thing that they're trying to solve. So when they give us attention, it's valuable to use that attention to make some progress forward, but we can't expect it to always be top of mind.
Right, right. And from your perspective, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What are some of the things you think, like what are the themes regulation wise that we're going to have for the next, let's say, 5 years? I know we've had some discussion coming out of, FinCEN. um, Mnuchin has said there's something coming in terms of crypto. You mentioned Crypto Mom. Hester Pierce from the SEC has made some positive moves in that space. What do you think we're going to see in the next 5 years in the US?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, in the next 5 years, I'm hoping that a lot of the gray will be cleared to black and white,
Hmm.
which doesn't really answer your question, but it's hard for me to answer the question, to be honest,
Hmm.
because every time I think I know which way it's going, it takes a left turn, goes
Yeah.
a different way. But ultimately, so ICOs didn't work, right? IEOs are clearly not really working that well.
Hmm.
Um, Stable coins are a problem. Um, Everything is getting more restricted and people are going global. But I guess if I were to make a prediction, I would say that the US at some point is going to recognize that it's a jurisdictional um, arbitrage situation. And if the US is not a good jurisdiction for developing some of these new technologies, we'll lose out. It'll get implemented in other geographic regions,
Hmm.
and we won't have the benefit of being the leader or the innovator in the space. So maybe it's my hope rather than my prediction. um,
Yeah, it's anybody's guess as well. And it really, you're right. It can take a left turn and then a right turn and then, you know, turn right back around again, depending on who's in positions of power, who is, you know, even, and I always see, if I see negative news, that gets a lot of attention. So I always think that when crypto news makes its way to the NBCs, the Forbes, the Bloombergs, usually it's
usually
extreme.
negative.
Yeah, it's extreme negative news, right? And so I always worry, like, these are the news outlets that, you know, political people read, right? Not just leaders, but political people. And if that's what they're seeing, then of course the reaction is going to be, we need to fix this now. When in reality, I think that
Yes,
the
exactly.
issues are normal and to be expected, and they're solvable if we work together to do so.
Yeah, right. Somebody gave me a great example recently. Um, he's uh, he's an older guy, and he was around when the internet started. And he told me that the internet, when it first came out, the media just kept harping on the fact that the internet was only useful for drug lords and criminals. And and look now, everyone is using the internet. But it does sound very familiar with what we've heard about Bitcoin, right? In
Mhm.
fact, I called my mother for her birthday yesterday, and she knows I got a new job, and she's like, "Are you still working for Bitcoin?" Because
Yeah,
that doesn't seem very safe. You know what I mean? The outside
totally.
perception is still there that Bitcoin's bad or cryptocurrency is bad. But I think over the next 5 years, we will at least see that turnaround as we bring more people into the space. We're going to see a favorable turn on public opinion.
That is my hope as well. And that's one of the main cornerstones of my channel, is I'm hoping that education primarily, and then secondarily, framing cryptocurrency and blockchain for what it is a huge arbiter for potential social change and potential, you know, change for the better in terms of freedoms for people. I think that's just making it
Yes,
more positive is the goal.
right. Let's
So
get some positive press.
yeah, yes, please. And I think, speaking in that same vein, what's the most exciting thing about crypto for you right now? What are you looking forward to most as the space develops?
I think I already mentioned adoption
Mhm.
of crypto, and I'm extremely excited about creating a way for everybody to participate and everybody to benefit on the grassroots level. From a macro level, I'm most excited about the potential that blockchain and crypto finance brings to change the world and really to equalize a lot of things. We've been talking recently a lot in conferences about the equality of intelligence distribution across the world, or the evenness of distribution, and
Mhm.
yet the privilege is not evenly distributed at all. So people are successful in more privileged environments. So what I really believe is that blockchain levels out that playing field because it's person to person, and it has nothing to do with jurisdiction or geography. So I'm hoping that we can see privilege take a backseat to merit at some point in the near future
Mhm.
with blockchain and crypto.
That would be indeed pretty awesome. And I think, continuing off of your thought, it's likely, in my opinion, that we see mainstream style adoption of cryptocurrency, blockchain based applications, especially in, you know, that sort of DeFi world. It's a huge bucket, are probably going to be in places where there's not a lot of infrastructure already. I think there's like a
Yes.
base level amount of technology adoption, like you need connectivity, but beyond that, the lack of financial infrastructure is probably a positive thing for adoption.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Why did uh, Bitpesa get so big in Africa so quickly? It's because there was no banking structure
Mhm.
there's no legacy banking structure that had to be upgraded in order for it to work, right? There was
Mhm.
nothing. So it got adopted very quickly, and there was no pushback. And I think the same thing, that's kind of your point, is that
Mhm.
where there's less development, there's less resistance.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot hard, and the way that I always talk about it is it's a lot harder to rip and replace all existing rails than it is to build new ones in new places. And I think
Did you know
you're
that?
already seeing that.
Did you know that most banking systems are written in COBOL?
I believe it. I've gotten the chance to work with banking systems a couple times in my career, and they're oftentimes like integration nightmares.
Yes, right.
Yep, absolutely. Which you will be, I'm sure you're intimately aware of from your time at PayPal, especially.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
So I'm curious too, and this is something I like to ask as many folks as possible that have been in the space for a while or that are leaders in the space. What are your top three go-to places to find crypto related news or education? Like where do you go when you're looking for something?
Um, I like Google Alerts because I can set up Google Alerts to notify me whenever something that I'm interested in
Mhm.
happens. Um, so it pops up a lot, which isn't exactly a media channel, but I really
Okay, it
love.
counts.
Okay, okay, cool. Um, and then Cointelegraph, I love because of their art, which is silly,
It's so
but
cool. Yeah.
isn't it? They've got such a good style, and you always know when it's a Cointelegraph um, uh, article because of the art that they have. But I will say that CoinDesk has probably the most unbiased editorial policies,
Mhm.
and I know a lot of the people at CoinDesk. They're very proud of the fact that their articles are they don't take money for articles, so they keep their reporting as pure as possible. So I do trust the. Of course, they've had their own scandals, right? So some things have been misreported, but I think they
Mhm.
were honestly misreported rather than, um,
Purposefully.
yeah, it wasn't corrupt. It was just a mistake.
Yeah, and I think that nowadays, no matter what company you are and what space that you live in terms of a company or what niche you're in, you will face controversy, you'll make mistakes, and the media will make it seem like it's an existential problem that's unique to your organization when
Yes.
in reality it's something that's due to happen for everyone. So take those things with a grain of salt if you're watching.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. And try to read between the lines.
Certainly, certainly. So we're coming up on just about 45 minutes, and I wanted to close with one question that you can refuse to answer if you'd like. But what would you say your top three cryptocurrency picks are? If you could pick one, or sorry, pick three for the next 5 to 10 years, what do you got?
Okay. How about Bitcoin?
Right?
Ethereum.
Awesome.
I like the big coins. I
Mhm.
have to say, I've dabbled in some of the smaller coins, but I don't have a third pick right now. I'm kind of evaluating some of the altcoins that are coming out. I just tend to be fairly suspicious, so I want to
Yeah.
see a little bit of adoption. I want to see a little bit of. I'm not as much of a speculator as a trader, so I like things that have a long term future. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick to two. I'm gonna refuse on number three.
Two is better than zero. I would say half the time it's a no go on that question in general, but I always have to ask just for posterity's sake. But Lisa, it was a pleasure speaking with you. I'm obviously looking forward to seeing what happens at Shapeshift um, from here on out, and I hope we can
Thank you.
definitely do this again.
That would be great. Thank you so much for having me.
Certainly, and one last thing, where can folks find you on Twitter or social media of some kind if they want to connect with you?
My handle on almost everything is Lisa is loud. So that goes for Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. No, maybe not LinkedIn, but everything else is Lisa is loud. But I'm on Twitter, and I think that's the best place to find me right now.
Cool. I'm in the same boat. You can always get a hold of me on Twitter. So thanks again, Lisa, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.